Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Advisory Committee meeting of the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency. Can you please do roll call?
Committee member Lerner,
Here.
Hoffman, Zach, here. Quiche, Miko, Launer,
Here.
Renz,
Here.
Danina, here. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Next item is the report of the chair, and I have 3 items to report. The first one is I attended the joint meeting of the governing board and the implementation board back on March 19th. And the board approved the changes to the Habitat Agency development fees that the committee recommended that they approve. The second item is to thank Jerry Haas and the rest of the team for setting up the annual spring field trip. And they went to Richmond Ranch Reserve on the 2nd of April. And as a matter of interest, Richmond Ranch is 3,650 acres, which is 3 times larger than the city of Gilroy.
Oh.
So it's a big piece of property. I understand its responsibility was divided up on the property, but that's quite a good piece of. And then last thing is our public advisory committee has a new appointee, Melissa Danina, excuse me, and she's senior principal ecologist at Environmental Science Associates. And maybe you'd like to say something like what interests you about here, why you're here, why you're showing, why you're interested, or.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an honor to be a part of this. So I've lived in San Jose for most of my career and life. So I've moved out here in 2002 from Texas, actually. But I've always followed the Habitat Agency and admired what's being done by the Habitat Agency. Known Ed for a long time and Nathan, and so the staff I think I've known. And so yeah, just to get more involved and understand better what is going on in my backyard is exciting.
Cool. Look forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Do any of the members of the Public Advisory Committee have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak about items that are not on the agenda?
I have no speakers.
No remote, okay.
No remote and no in person.
Okay, I think the next item is our very short consent calendar, which is to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was back in February. And does anyone want to talk about it or make any corrections? I know the meeting was videotaped, so it's pretty clear what happened. Excuse me. Would someone like to move to approve the meeting?
I move
Minutes, excuse me.
I move for the meeting. Minutes.
Can we just, all in favor, say aye?
We have someone online. We have
Alice.
committee member Kaufman online, so we'll have to do a roll
Good to
call.
see you. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So can I, committee member Lerner,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Zach? Yes. Launer,
Yes.
Renz,
Yes.
and Danina.
Yes.
Okay.
Next item on our agenda is annual report from staff.
And Jerry Haas will be presenting the annual report to you all. So he's the man of many talents, plan amendment, field trips, and annual report.
Thank you, Ed. And I bake too.
Good cinnamon rolls.
Do we have a, can I pull it up there? Okay. Well, this is our 11th annual report that we're sharing out. I think I've presented the last 6, perhaps 7 of them. And each year it seems like we just keep getting better and better. So there's a lot to share every year. Look forward to bringing this out. The primary purpose of these reports is A, to just be transparent about what we do, but also B, probably more importantly, this should be A, is demonstrating compliance with the requirements of the habitat plan, staying ahead with conservation, keeping ahead of the impacts that are going on with development in the area. So these are some slides that are pulled directly from the report itself. This figure shows the number of projects that we had covered in the reporting year. So this was from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. 28 projects covered in the reporting year, kind of a mix of private and public projects, with a few participating special entities that joined in because they wanted cover. They were elected to seek coverage under the habitat plan. And so to date, we've had 473 projects covered in total by the plan. You'll see a lot more in the earlier years, and that was because we were capturing projects that really didn't have land cover impacts. They were in urban or suburban areas, didn't pay fees. They paid nitrogen deposition fees, maybe something like that, but they didn't require any sort of conservation. So we stopped tracking those with all the rest of the covered projects and tracked nitrogen deposition only projects separately, and that's why the numbers kind of come down like that. Plus, development patterns change over time. And this is, it's hard for me to see that there, the impacts throughout the permit term. Yeah, maybe I will up here, see it a little bit clearer. And hopefully this microphone works as well. Sounds like it does. So these are cumulative impacts throughout the permit term. The pink column there will show permanent impacts, and there's some smaller temporary impacts that are shown in green. The plan anticipated about 340 years of development, or excuse me, 340 acres of development impacts every year. We're falling short of that. I think this year was about 215. We see a little bit less than that than was anticipated by the plan. Some people would say that's a good thing. It means that there's not as much development conversion of natural land happening. But that's kind of a glimpse of where we are. This reporting year, we saw about 315 acres. This is one of the covered projects in the reporting year. This is a Microsoft data center up in San Jose, 64 acres of on-site development. So the image on the right there, that hatched orange with hatched red over it, is the project site proper. And then you can see on that same image, the hatched areas that are sort of light green are off-site permanent impacts. So 25 acres of off-site permanent impacts for that project as well. This project generated about $2.7 million in fees for the habitat plan. So this is an example of a public project that was covered. We get a lot of these with Valley Water, county roads and airports, long linear projects like this. This is the Pacheco conduit. This takes water from San Luis Reservoir into the south parts of the county. Huge conduits, probably 8 or 10 feet in diameter. It's gigantic, like a subway. But they have to go through there and do maintenance. When they do maintenance, sometimes they're crossing over areas where they have special status species, and permitting would be a nightmare for them. But with the habitat plan, they pay the fees and they just do the work and they move right along. We acquired one property in the reporting year. This is Richmond Ranch that Reed was talking about earlier. The second phase is what we purchased in the reporting year. That's the property that's in green. The county parks owns the property that's in blue, the larger portion of that. And the vision is that at some point we'll have a conservation easement over all the ranch and then share that with county parks. We took our spring field trip out there, as you mentioned, Reed. Alice was there. So beautiful site to visit. Everything was blooming. It was gorgeous. We got to see some of the serpentine habitat that you'll see in the top right corner. At least 8, probably more, but at least 8 of our covered species occupy that property. That property acquisition brings our total reserve system size up to 16,150 acres. That puts us pretty far ahead in terms of conservation. By now, the 46,000 acre requirement at year 50, we're fully a third of the way through in terms of what conservation that we need to protect, and we're about quarter of the way through the permit term. So this is it's a good metric here. And as you would expect, if we're ahead in conservation, we're ahead in actual, if you break this down a little bit further, natural community protection. So the acres or stream length and miles that we're supposed to protect by now, we're brimming, brimming with success, I'd say, look at it. We're continuing oversight, management, monitoring of 9 different restoration projects that we've done over the past few years. One project is currently in the planning and design stage. That's Pajaro River Agricultural Preserve Phase 3 by our esteemed restoration ecologist, Nathan Hale, here in the audience. And one project consisting of excavation and repair of 5 small ponds was implemented in the reporting year. And so we're finding that this is a bigger bang for the buck if you're going to try to create a habitat for some of our herp species. Increasing hydro periods is easier if you've got a stock pond that you can just sort of dredge and repair than building new ones. And we're showing success with occupancy in a lot of these ponds. To date, we've achieved quite a bit of restoration credit, I would say, for the plan. It's hard to imagine, we're looking at how on earth are we going to restore 10 miles of stream? But we chip away a little bit at it. Each year we get a restoration project. We're up to 4.6 miles already of streams. We've got 10 acres of sycamore alluvial woodland that we restored, 6.7 acres of mixed riparian woodland. So all these we have to continue working on, we have to continue restoring through the next few years. I think restoration is supposed to end by year 45, but we're moving at a pretty good clip now. This is a busy slide, and that's sort of by intent. There's a lot of work that goes on aside from acquiring land, aside from restoring land, aside from preparing reports to share with you all. We're out there in the field. I'll just kind of go from the top left up there. That is a picture of some pretty severe pig damage to a seep. That is a pig corral or pig trap up there, up next to it. So the first thing to do was get the pigs out of there. Next thing to do was to fence off that seep. I've been told probably by next year's report, we'll be able to show a fully restored seep out there. The picture directly below that is a nighttime California red-legged frog survey. That is Habitat Agency's own Ben Teton and Matt Fogarty doing a nighttime survey, and they've got a frog there. So it looks like they're pretty successful at what they're doing. The picture below that is a partnering that we did with the California Academy of Sciences for under a local assistance grant to do some paintbrush genomics. So she's out there with a Tiburon paintbrush. That's the yellow flower there, collecting samples. In the middle, that's Coyote Ridge. And this is part of a lot of what we do is infrastructure management, construction. So that top image is trenching for a water line. That water line is going up to the trough that you see that gentleman from OSA working on down there in the lower picture. Top right picture was a pleasant surprise at O'Connell Ranch, one of our properties out of Pacheco. Those are California condors, came all the way up here from Pinnacles. They're not a covered species, but they're certainly welcome to feed on whatever damn animal was there at the time. Just below that is our agency's own Sam Fowle, who's working with a crew to remove invasive weeds at one of our reserve properties. Overall, I think we removed somewhere along the lines of 400 acres of invasive weeds from different properties throughout the system. And Sam is also our lead for prescribed burning. And so that lower picture on the right is a prescribed burn at Calero County Park. So here's an image just kind of showing revenues to date. We had a pretty big fiscal year. You can imagine that Microsoft contributed to some of that, but it would have been pretty good even without Microsoft, better than the last few years. So you can kind of see this up and down pattern where we're sort of consistent, and then a big project will come along, and then we'll get a little bit of money, work a little bit longer, and then back to the way it was before. This is my favorite chart to show you the 35% conservation. Very happy with that. And you can see that we're doing that with 13% of the permanent impacts, which means the fee funding, 16% of our fee funding has led us to 35% of our conservation target, which is very impressive. It's more a testament to Ed's hard work and driving tactics to get grants, land acquisition grants under our belt, and we picked up a lot of property. So thanks to him and us for doing it. We picked up open space, so now we don't have any zeros on any of these columns, so we're in pretty good shape right now. The request before you is actually to make a recommendation for our implementation board to adopt the annual report when we take it to them later this month. So happy to answer any questions you might have to help you make that decision.
Very impressive. I mean, it's a good year.
It was a really good year. The slide with all those images, that is probably a third of
Yeah.
what they were doing out there. There's just so much activity. There's research studies we're doing right now. There's wildlife tracking studies. There's development of our wildlife overcrossing, the land bridge down Chaco. There's just quite a bit that's happening with the small group of dedicated professionals that we have.
So in the future, we can expect some up and down as well. So I think part of your message, though, this is some years there won't be as much development, and so we won't have as much fees.
Yeah, we had a few years of woe. You can see on this one, on this figure here, 3 years in a row, kind of low like that. I was sounding the alarm bells a little bit. We were going into the plan amendment and wondering whether we needed to make changes because we weren't seeing the impacts occurring at the rate we thought, which means the money isn't coming in. It did lead to a decision through the plan amendment to reduce our take request for certain aquatic resource types, ponds and freshwater marsh. So that reduced some of our restoration commitment, which brought down some of the costs. So if the plan amendment's approved, we could save, I've forgotten the figure, substantial. It's 6.5 million or six.
It was overall like 23 million.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
For the reduction altogether over the permit term.
Yep.
So it was worth pursuing. But then you're right, Reed, then all of a sudden a big year comes along. And if there are more data centers or more projects of that size that come in other parts of the county, large subdivisions can generate a large number of fees. Communications Hill, when it came in a few years ago, was a big fee payer too for the residential subdivision. So up and down.
What are the goals for fiscal 26, 27?
We have agency goals, not my personal goals. Is that your?
I'd like to flesh out his personal goals
Yeah.
for his performance evaluations.
There's a vacation, there's a new car.
Based on development, or
Yeah, some of it I'll talk about in the executive officer report up next. But it's more of the same. And the ranchers are an important part of our partnership too. Like Alan grazes some of our lands. So trying to improve the water infrastructure on some of the lands that's lacking. And just understanding, the changing political environment in Washington and how that affects us. And so trying to adjust and adapt to that. And Jerry did note there's there's more down years, unfortunately, than up years with fees. It does mean there's less development on farmland, which is a good thing. But it also means less revenue for us to do all the things that Jerry just reported on. So part of the thinking is, moving forward, trying to keep our goals and objectives within our budget constraints. That's our biggest challenge, but more of the same. And I'll hint on a couple of the goals for the next couple of years in the EO report.
And there is quite a bit built into the plan that we're required to do anyway. So we're going to be still busy behind the scenes, building up management plans for new reserve units. We have to build a management plan for Richmond Ranch, for example, and Lakeside and all these other properties, and then start implementing those management plans on our properties. We're finishing up our database builds. We have a new database that'll be rolling out before June. We have a new website that'll be coming out in July. So the plan amendment is something that will change hopefully by the end of the year. Yeah, there's just quite a bit happening right now. You're not going to want to miss it, so stick around.
Can you say a little more about the new GIS website, GP?
Yeah, it's a GIS based. Our database over the years, which started out initially as just an analog database. It was a Microsoft Access program, and you know, actually keying in the information for every project coming in, and it was getting painful, and it was also little mistakes were happening. And then we had our spatial data that tracked impacts to modeled habitat and protection of modeled habitat separately on GIS. So at one point we sort of just pivoted and decided, let's just have one database that does everything, because now Esri can do that. Esri can do reporting. Esri can give us, you know, field apps that we can use real time out in the field to generate information that feeds our database. So it's been a work in progress. Some of the biggest challenges were just how you track a lot of the biological goals and objectives that are built into the plan. Some of them are pretty simple. You protect X number of acres of oak woodland. Check a box when our reserve system is that big. Other ones are do this study, the feasibility study for wildlife connectivity. Okay, we do that study. So how do we document that that's been done? There's no playbook really to be able to demonstrate that. So we built the database to be able to help us track all those biological goals and objectives over time. So when any of you ask, hey, I noticed that you're supposed to be doing this thing, have you done it? We can either say yes or no, we will, that it's coming along here. So we're looking forward to it.
And that'll be up and running soon, correct?
Yeah, June.
June, okay.
Do other agencies or do our partners have access to that database, or?
It is an internal database. It's got a lot of sensitive information, species locations and things like that, but we can absolutely share any information that's contained within the database. So we'll be able to generate tables that are real-time tracking instead of 1 year report that looks back a year behind us to come up with, you know, tell you what we did. We can tell you in a moment's notice whether we're approaching a take limit, for example, or whether or not we've protected enough occurrences of yellow-legged frog or something like that.
Very cool.
I'm very excited about it.
Is there public comment on this?
Yes, we have Doug Muirhead.
Good evening. My name is Doug Muirhead, Morgan Hill resident. This is a really down in the weeds question, but I'm curious what kind of tools you're using out in the field. And the question is, a couple of years ago, Derek Newman at OSA mentioned their conversion to electric power with battery backpacks lightened the tool load, which reduced fatigue on your team, and I know that's important to you. I'm just curious if you've had some thoughts on that, or like I say, it's a very off the wall.
No, it's okay. No, I have not. We did just purchase a drone to help with land management activities and monitoring. We're using AI for for looking at pictures, you know, because you can imagine those wildlife cameras, thousands of pictures. So you train the AI to look for a mountain lion or a badger or something. We're using it for acoustic monitoring for red-legged frogs. So that's some of the technology. This database that Jerry talked about will help a lot with sort of connecting the field crews more with just-in-time reporting and tracking. The stuff with what Doug mentioned, that's interesting, but yeah, I'm not aware of that. Julie would probably know more about that sort of technology. Yeah.
No other public speakers. No.
Thank you for your presentation. Time for a report from the executive officer.
Would you take action
Well,
to
Oh, I'm sorry. Our actions to.
recommend, make a recommendation, approval or denial of it?
I recommend that we approve the status report that we received.
Yeah, recommend that the implementation board, they have to adopt it. So that's the action.
Okay,
So your recommendation that they adopt it, I guess is what, how it'd be worded.
I make a motion that we recommend to the implementation board that they accept the recommendations of the report that we just received.
That's perfect.
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
All right.
Can we vote on it, please? Thank you.
Committee member Lerner,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Quiche,
Yes.
Launer,
Yes, whoops.
Renz,
Yes.
Danina.
Yes.
Passed.
I think I voted for you first.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other action we need to take on this? Okay, thank you. Now I think we can move to the report from our executive office.
So just couple items before I get into the cash and investment and revenues and expenditures in this fiscal year. So just wanted to kind of circle back with the concern that the board had at the last meeting about county parks, especially with acquiring new lands for enrollment in the reserve system, where they were supposed to be at around 25, like all the metrics around 25% of the way towards the 6,000 acres. And I believe they were under 2%. So I had a discussion with county parks executive staff, and they were concerned that they were behind, and they want to come to and it was a good, robust discussion about how do we get there. And part of the challenge is they're a very oriented organization. They've had some staffing struggles, as Julie Anderson mentioned at the last board meeting. And me, I'm like, let's get this done. So how do we thread that needle and work collaboratively? We had a great meeting with them out at Richmond Ranch, the property that Jerry talked about, with the goal of enrolling the whole thing into the reserve system. And as Reed alluded to, it's a mixed management situation where they own just under 1,500 acres and we own just slightly over 2,100 acres. So they technically did buy a property for enrollment in the reserve system, but it takes an awful long time for that to happen. And I'm certainly frustrated by it, and they understand that. And they're going to come to the August board meeting to talk to you all about how they're going to work harder to try to meet their goals and objectives that are baked into the plan. That's what the county agreed to do, and they understand that. Yeah. So now, any questions on that point?
That sounds great. Thank you for following up on the concern.
You're welcome, Rachel. Yep. So this first slide here goes over the cash and investment position. So we have just under 9 million, looks like 8.6 million in something called the Local Agency Investment Fund, or LAIF. And governments can invest with the state treasurer's office into a fund that they manage. It usually gets around the same rate as a high yield interest savings account, sometimes a little better than those. Right now, I think it was at 3.81%. And I know that's higher than a lot of the high yield, or it's usually between 2.5 and 3.5. So it's a good benefit. It's a riskless investment for governments that invest this fund, and it helps grow your money. So that's part of our, rainy day fund and some of our land acquisition monies, and some of the Burrowing Owl Fund is in that. The endowment is invested with a organization called Sand Hill Global Partners. They manage endowments for Post and the Land Trust, and for very wealthy foundations and people, and the rare, the billionaire class. So they are really good at what they do. So we have the endowments invested like something your 401k would be invested in. Very, very similar kind of investment profile. The liquidity account is also invested with them, and just to provide a little slightly better return than the LAIF fund can do. And that too is very low risk. And as you can see, that's over just under 3.4 million. So if you're talking about liquidity, we have around 12 million. The endowment is just under 11, and this is of the end of last month. So the recent jump in the stock market is not reflected in any of those accounts. So the total investment accounts that we have are 22.7 million. So we also have money with JP Morgan Chase, and that's our operating account balance. That's how we pay our bills every day and keep things. So that's just 1.66 million. These are the revenues that we've had to date. So we predicted that we were going to have about 4 million. I expected it was going to be another slightly down year, the ones that Jerry was showing. And when the Microsoft project came in a little earlier, we thought it was going to come in this year. I said, oh, we're really going to have a down year. But fortunately, there's been some other projects that have come in, and we're really close to our projection, which was at 4.2 million. So I'm expecting us to be at or near what we projected at the beginning of the year. My average on this is really bad. You would probably not want to be following how I try to predict this, but this year I might have hit it. So it would have been good to bet on me this year. We didn't acquire any properties, so that's a big reason why the foundation and direct public grants are a little bit lower. It's more tied to the plan amendment and reimbursements for some of the monitoring and land management activities we've done. That's investment income. So we're darn near close to $1 million so far this year. Interest income at 640,000. Lease revenue, that's primarily from the sporting clays, shooting range, and from the ranchers who pay to lease and graze our lands, and then other miscellaneous revenues. So total revenues to date are at around 7.3 million. On the expense side, you can see in that first column, we've spent 6.4 million to date. We budgeted for 10. We'll probably come in somewhere around 9 is what I'm projecting, because there's been a lot of work done in this last quarter and the end of the third quarter related to those land management activities that Jerry showed you in that slide. The good thing is we're spending most of the money in the conservation strategy implementation is what we're supposed to be doing. And then the technical and permitting, that's a lot tied in with the plan amendment and the setting up the in lieu fee program with the interagency review team for the Clean Water Act, streamlining compliance. then waters permitting is also tied in with that. So I imagine we'll spend less than the 10.3 that's stated here, which is good. Probably somewhere north of 9 million is where we'll probably come out. And I'm just going to report just on some of the outreach activity related to, I have an advocacy trip to Sacramento with the California HCP Coalition on Monday, this coming up Monday. And I'll be meeting with Assembly Member Pellerin and with a larger group, with the staff, not the senators, but with the staff of Senators Cortese and Becker, Assembly Member Cholera, and Speaker Rivas, among others from other parts of California. So it'll be a meeting-packed day. We will also be meeting with Megan Hurdle, who's the new director of California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We'll be advocating for quicker rollouts of funding for WCB through Prop 4, promoting the benefits of NCCPs and their importance to the state's 30 by 30 biodiversity goals. There's several bills that we're supporting. There's one that we're opposed to, unless the language changes. Really, it's another one of the Wiener streamlining CEQA bills. And we're also trying to advocate for more cap and trade funds for NCCPs and natural and working lands in general. On the federal side, I had an advocacy trip with the National HCP Coalition, March 24th through 26th. The focus of the trip was advocating for increased funding for Section 6, which is kind of in a bottleneck of the money, the grants were awarded. And this is a program that has bipartisan support. Certainly there's an understanding, there's this dual benefit of facilitating development and coming up with better conservation actions and outcomes. And even though grants were awarded, they're held up at the Department of Interior. We're not sure exactly why. The new NOFO, which is the notice of funding that comes out, hasn't been released yet. So this is part of, to your question, Alan, I'm just not sure where, some of these programs are going or will head to. That the Bureau of Rec program that helped with developing more fencing out at Baird and Davison and out at Coyote Ridge, that the Central Valley Project funding has been axed. And that was a great program of work, helping us improve the land and they also had an acquisition component. Section 6 is still in the congressional budget, both out of the House and the Senate. But there seems to be a disconnect between the, Congress allocating the funding and the administration following through on that. I mean, this is nothing new. We've been hearing it. Name that federal department. The good news is Department of Ag seems not to be under the same kind of scrutiny as Department of Interior. So the NRCS programs that we worked with Justin Fields out at Coyote Ridge, it's a joint grant with him. And we worked collaboratively, as Jerry showed in that one slide, with OSA. We're also hoping to do another one with Richard Vargas out at Richmond. Of course, Alan, we'd be definitely game of doing something like that with you too, if that's something you'd be interested in. So I met with our delegation. I did meet with Congressman Panetta, he's always very positive, uplifting kind of guy to always meet with. We met with several legislative committees, different on the House and Senate side, as well as administration officials, some really high ups at the Department of Interior. I also met with the staff of our two senators, as well as some Southern California congressional members. A positive outcome of our meeting with the Department of Interior leadership was additional follow-up meetings being scheduled for later this month, including Abby Fateman, who is the president of the National Coalition, being invited to the National Training Center in West Virginia to meet with advocates for rangeland and working lands, as well as Department of Interior, to try to make the Endangered Species Act work better, both for landowners as well as entities like ours who are implementing HCPs. There was definitely some ignorance on the part of the Department of Interior about our role. They thought that we were facilitating federal ownership of land, and that's just not the case. So it seems like we're going through this all the time of trying to educate people on. We have some guests, so being scheduled. So Abby is going to be doing that, and it's good to be at the table to be involved in those conversations. So on the land acquisition, and this is dealing directly with your question, Alan, there's the Silver Creek Kirby Slope Mitigation Bank site where, was the Justin Andres has been the grazer out there. We're going to be taking ownership of that mitigation bank and hopefully doing a better job of managing habitat for bay checker spot butterflies. And an endowment is coming with that because those lands have already been encumbered for mitigation. So Taylor Morrison will be giving us cash to invest in an endowment to manage it over long term. They're also going to give us 167 acres, which are not encumbered, that will be enrolled in our reserve system. Hopefully that'll happen by the end of this fiscal year, by June. And we view it as a win-win. And given the problems with the bay checker spot butterfly, overall population numbers, acquiring this property and trying to improve it for bay checker spot butterflies will, be an overall positive thing. As some of you may have read, Post acquired the Mead Ranch last month, and we will be acquiring roughly 1,000 acres of that property from Post. We'll have to fundraise for it. We submitted 2 grants just the last week to the Coastal Conservancy and to the Wildlife Conservation Board to get the money to buy that property. The Valley Water had an option on the Bella Limi property, which is near Rancho El Toro in Pacheco Pass. That's around 1,400 acres. They're assigning the option agreement to us. They had purchased an option for mitigation for Pacheco Dam. Pacheco Dam is now not happening. We just signed the agreements with Valley Water. They were just executed last week. So we will work to fundraise to acquire, we're going to work to acquire that property. Some beautiful sycamore alluvial, and there is some serpentine in the rare plants on that property too. There's also 2 other acquisitions in the queue that I can't discuss for obvious reasons. So other conservation actions that are happening or will be happening is the wildlife directional fencing on Pacheco Pass was now it's fully constructed and built. I was alluding to the decline of the checker spot butterfly populations around the region. And the species is endemic to California and pretty much just in this county. Used to be populations in some of the other surrounding counties, but it's pretty much restricted just to this county. And one thing we're going to be doing is very similar to what we've been doing with the burrowing owls, is we're going to work with the Larry Ellison animal rescue shelter in Saratoga, and they're going to be captively rearing a checker spot butterflies, and then we will release them back in the wild up on Coyote Ridge. So that'll be one of the big things we're working on next year. And then the burrowing owl, Alan is helping out with grazing on a couple properties with the reintroduction after we added another property, the Cuzio property, to the list of, and we thank OSA and Post for that. And we'll be looking to expand those populations within Coyote Valley, and potentially if the population at Lakeside is a success, then looking at other areas that are a little higher in elevation, like the O'Connell Ranch. We finished fixing the fences at O'Connell Ranch, and we'll be doing an RFP shortly for to get a grazing tenant out there. Mountain lion tracking, we tracked another mountain lion. Unfortunately, that mountain lion was killed by a more mature male. It was a 2-year male, and so that was definitely a loss in terms of trying to understand the behavior of the mountain lions in the Pacheco Pass area, the Diablo Mountains. We also captured 2 moms with kittens in the area around Mount Madonna on a property that we own called, we always refer it to Uvis South. It's off of Uvis Road going towards Highway 152. And Jerry alluded to the pond restorations. We'll be doing more pond restorations next year on Coyote Ridge and Richmond, doing some of the same work that Jerry highlighted, and a lot of bullfrog controls to try to help the red-legged frog and pond turtle populations. So far, so good with some of the bullfrog controls going on in the Pacheco Pass area, and we're looking at to expand that work to other properties. So thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there time for questions? It's Alice. Reed is looking back and forth. It's Alice.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, what was your question, Alice?
Yeah, no, I just well, it's kind of a comment, but I'm really thrilled that that we're looking at acquiring the Pacheco Dam property. I was curious as to how many acres are we looking at, and is it the whole of the the Valley Water property that was going to be Pacheco Dam?
No, it's not. It's not the dam footprint property. It was a property that they acquired to mitigate for the impacts of the dam. So a gentleman, there is a single landowner of all those properties kind of that were going to be impacted by the dam. And we haven't had any discussions with him about buying his holdings, which are, I'm guessing, somewhere around 17,000 acres. So that would be nice, but.
Thanks for clarifying.
Oh, you're welcome.
Rachel, did you have something you want to add?
No, very informative though. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next meeting is in August, and is there a particular item that we need to put on our agenda for that next meeting in August? Okay.
Yeah, if you want any updates on any of the monitoring work, let us know. You can always email us too.
My head is still spinning on all the things you guys are lined up to do. So that's kind of, I'm not asking questions. It's like you just kept going. So, you know, an update in August will take 6 hours.
True. But if there's anything you particularly be a little more
Yeah.
interested in, we could focus in on that for you. Yeah.
Just PowerPoint's good. Pictures, PowerPoints, that was very, very good. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, one I took note of, I noticed Nathan and I both commented on the same thing, post on LinkedIn, which was a report about tree population being much more damaged by climate change than we had imagined.
Yeah.
And I personally just I personally kind of wonder, are we planting enough trees? Are we planting the right kind of trees? And I know in this group, we tend to talk about animals and amphibians. Maybe you could talk about trees to some degree.
Sure.
Protecting, I think there are trees on our list of protected.
Yeah, nothing. So more communities like Oak Woodland, Valley Oak, Riparian. The plant area doesn't really overlap too much in the redwoods or the conifers, so we don't have really much of a requirement there. I attended this talk that was put on by the Santa Cruz, the Santa Cruz Mountain Network, Stewardship Network. They had a science symposium, and there was one of the speakers who talked very much about that issue that you brought up. And I've over the years, either reading articles or attending conferences, I think people are a little bit in denial about what's going to happen. Maybe me included, I don't know. The redwoods have pretty much mostly disappeared from the Bay Area over time. The oak woodlands, the southern reaches of oak woodlands will probably be somewhere in the Big Sur area, meaning everything kind of south of there, except for the pockets, will be gone. And certainly your question about planting the right trees is something I think it's a very important question. And the old way of doing things, we can't. I know there was some restoration projects the speaker spoke of they were starting to plant the trees and shrubs that they thought would be the next generation, the next succession of plants. So a lot of areas where, we see oak woodlands now might end up being chaparral. So those are things that will happen over decades. It won't just disappear overnight, but certainly the severity of the fires and the drought has really stressed out trees, and you see that in the Sierras too, quite a bit. Yeah.
And another factor influencing lack of regeneration of oak woodlands is pigs on the landscape, rooting around, eating the acorns. And so we don't see a lot of young oaks coming up. We've planted quite a few oaks on our properties, out of Pacheco in particular. We planted lots of willow in riparian areas and sycamore trees as well. So we're going to have to plant more. If the plan amendment's approved and we end up covering Swainson's hawk, we'll be planting even more trees for that species too. So something to keep an eye on for sure.
Well, thank you for everybody volunteering their time or expending their time. And good meeting. Thank you very much. I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks to you all. We can't do this without you. So